There was a time when cars didn't just take you somewhere, they introduced you. Before you shook a hand, before you said a word, before you stepped out. In the 1960s, a car wasn't transportation, it was reputation. It was ambition on four wheels. It was the loudest way to say, I've arrived. This was the decade when chrome wasn't excessive, it was expected. When horsepower wasn't measured for efficiency, it was measured for dominance. When luxury didn't whisper refinement, it declared superiority. And the most fascinating part? Some of these cars cost as much as houses. Some were hand-built in Italy. Some were so powerful that insurance companies didn't know what to do with them. Tonight, we're stepping into that golden, dramatic, unapologetic era. 7 machines, each one built with a purpose, each one built for someone who didn't believe in blending in. Let's begin with a car that challenged royalty and did it with confidence. Car number 1, Lincoln Continental Mark III, 1969. When the Lincoln Continental Mark III debuted in April of 1968 as a 1969 model, it had one clear mission: take on Cadillac's El Dorado. Not compete quietly, not offer an alternative, challenge it. And Lincoln didn't arrive timidly. With a starting price of around $6,740, this was serious money in the late 60s. For context, that was roughly the cost of 2 well-equipped Mustangs. Many Americans at the time earned under $8,000 per year. Buying this car wasn't practical, it was intentional. The first thing you noticed wasn't the badge, it was the presence. Long hood, hidden headlights, a bold chrome grille, a sweeping roofline that flowed into a clean, formal rear deck. It didn't look sporty, it looked powerful. Under that massive hood sat a 460 cubic inch V8 engine, producing 365 horsepower and an ocean of torque. You didn't have to push it hard, you barely had to try. Press the accelerator and the Mark III didn't lunge forward like a muscle car, it surged. Smooth, effortless, controlled. This wasn't performance for adrenaline, this was performance for authority. And inside, that's where Lincoln made its real statement. Open the heavy door and step into a cabin designed not for drivers, but for owners. Optional leather upholstery wrapped the seats in soft, thick hides. Genuine walnut trim stretched across the dashboard and doors. Automatic climate control, still a novelty in most homes, maintained a steady, comfortable temperature. Everything was powered: seats, windows, even the vent windows. And then, placed elegantly in the center of the dashboard, was a detail that perfectly captured the car's attitude: a Cartier-designed clock. Not a generic timepiece, Cartier. It wasn't necessary, it wasn't practical, it was symbolic. This car wasn't built for someone climbing the ladder, it was built for someone already at the top. Driving the Mark III didn't feel aggressive, it felt commanding. The steering was light, the ride was composed, and despite its size, it moved with surprising grace. This was American luxury at full confidence. And for many buyers, it worked. The Mark III became one of Lincoln's most successful models of the era, proving that Cadillac no longer owned the luxury conversation alone. But while the Mark III represented polished confidence, the next car didn't care about elegance at all. It cared about domination. Car number 2, Lincoln Continental Convertible, early 1960s. If there was ever a car built for grand entrances, this was it. The early 1960s Lincoln Continental Convertible didn't just transport you to events, it staged you. With an original price hovering around $6,900, nearly double the cost of a well-equipped family sedan at the time, this wasn't a casual purchase, this was a lifestyle. The design was restrained compared to the wild fins of the late 1950s, but it carried a quiet authority. Clean lines, a long flat hood, a formal roofline when closed, and then the doors. Rear hinged, officially called coach doors, unofficially known as suicide doors. When they opened, they didn't swing outward like ordinary doors, they revealed. Passengers stepped out gracefully without awkward twisting or bending. Presidents used this car, celebrities used this car. This was the car of dignitaries. Under the hood sat a V8 producing around 300 horsepower, more than enough to move its nearly 5,500-pound body with steady confidence. It wasn't quick in a muscle car sense, but it didn't need to be. This car floated. The suspension absorbed imperfections with a softness that felt almost disconnected from the road. Driving it felt like gliding across polished marble. But what truly mesmerized people was the convertible top. At the touch of a button, a mechanical sequence began. The trunk opened, panels lifted, the fabric roof folded itself carefully into a hidden compartment. It took about 45 seconds, and during those 45 seconds, people watched. It wasn't just a mechanism, it was performance art. Of course, the complexity sometimes meant maintenance headaches. When it worked, it was magic. When it didn't, it was expensive magic. Inside, the Continental was plush, deep leather seating, thick carpeting, genuine wood accents. This wasn't flashy luxury, this was confident luxury. It didn't need to sparkle, it needed to last. Even today, the early 1960s Continental convertible remains one of the most iconic American luxury cars ever built, a perfect balance between understatement and drama. But while the Lincoln represented composed elegance, the next car didn't care about elegance at all. It cared about domination. Car number 3, Chevrolet Camaro ZL1, 1969. By the late 1960s, something wild was happening in America. Muscle cars were escalating, horsepower numbers were climbing, and automakers were quietly trying to outdo each other, sometimes bending rules to do it. Then, Chevrolet did something bold. They created the Camaro ZL1. At first glance, it looked like a Camaro, but beneath the hood, chaos. Instead of a typical iron block engine, Chevrolet installed a 427 cubic inch aluminum V8, officially rated at 430 horsepower, though many believe the real number was closer to 500. For context, that was supercar territory in 1969. The ZL1 could run the quarter mile in the low 11-second range with minimal modifications. That wasn't fast for the time, that was terrifyingly fast. And here's where it gets interesting. Chevrolet didn't advertise it widely. They slipped it into the order sheet under a special program known as CPO, Central Office Production Order. Most buyers never knew it existed. And the price tag? Over $7,200 when new, nearly double the price of a standard Camaro. That made it one of the most expensive American performance cars of its time. Only 69 units were ever built. 69, that's it. Dealers struggled to sell them because the price was so high. Some reportedly even swapped out the aluminum engine for cheaper iron versions just to make the cars easier to move off the lot. Inside, there was nothing luxurious. No plush leather, no walnut trim, no dramatic convertible ballet. The interior was simple, functional, almost Spartan, because this car had one purpose: speed. When you started it, it didn't purr, it shook. The idle was rough, the exhaust note was aggressive. It felt alive, like it wanted to break free. This wasn't a car you floated in, this was a car you wrestled. And today, because of its rarity and performance pedigree, authentic ZL1 Camaros sell for millions at auction. What once struggled to find buyers became collector gold. And that's the beauty of the 1960s automotive world. Luxury was evolving, performance was exploding, and the line between status symbol and street weapon was becoming thinner by the year. 3 cars, 3 completely different philosophies: authority, elegance, raw power. And we're only getting started. Car number 4, Cadillac Eldorado Biarritz, 1960. If the Lincoln was composed, the Eldorado Biarritz was dramatic. This wasn't subtle luxury. This was American confidence at full volume. In 1960, the Eldorado Biarritz convertible carried a price tag of around $7,400. To understand that number, consider this. The average new home in 1960 cost about $12,000. You were spending more than half a house on a car, and Cadillac made sure everyone knew it. The tail fins were still there, slightly refined compared to the outrageous 1959 peaks, but they soared proudly. Chrome stretched across the body like jewelry. The stance was wide, low, commanding. Under the hood sat a 390 cubic inch V8 producing 345 horsepower. That was more than enough to move nearly 5,000 pounds of steel with surprising smoothness. But speed wasn't the point. Presence was. The Eldorado didn't hurry, it cruised. Inside, Cadillac didn't hold back. Fine leather seats, deep pile carpeting, power windows, power seats, power steering, power brakes, even a power-operated trunk lid. Everything worked at the touch of a button, because by 1960, luxury meant convenience. Only 1,285 Biarritz convertibles were built that year, making it rare even when new. It was also one of the last Cadillacs to fully embrace the dramatic fin era before design trends shifted toward cleaner lines. This wasn't just transportation, it was the closing chapter of an extravagant design philosophy. And then, while Cadillac celebrated American excess, someone else was building something far more dangerous: Car number 5, Shelby Cobra 427, 1965 to 1967. If luxury was one side of the 1960s, rebellion was the other, and no car embodied rebellion quite like the Shelby Cobra 427. Carroll Shelby had one simple idea: take a lightweight British roadster body and insert something outrageous into it. The result was borderline insanity. Under the hood of the Cobra 427 lived a 7-liter, 427 cubic inch Ford V8, producing up to 485 horsepower in street form. Let that sink in. In the mid-1960s, when most family sedans made under 200 horsepower, this small open-top roadster nearly doubled that. The Cobra could go from 0 to 60 in just over 4 seconds, on tires that were nowhere near modern standards. Driving it wasn't comfortable, it was intense. The steering was heavy, the acceleration was violent. The sound? Thunder. At idle, it rumbled. Under throttle, it roared like it wanted to tear the asphalt apart. New, it cost around $7,500, a serious amount of money in 1965. For many buyers, it was the price of a small home. And yet, about 260 original 427 Cobras were built that year. Many of today, authentic examples sell for millions. Because the Cobra wasn't engineered for comfort, it was engineered to beat Ferrari. And in many ways, it did. But while the Cobra represented raw mechanical fury, the next car blended Italian artistry with American muscle in a way few dared to attempt. Car number 6, Dual Ghia L6.4, 1961 to 1963. Some cars were built for the rich. This one was built for the elite. The Dual Ghia L6.4 wasn't mass-produced, it wasn't widely advertised, and it certainly wasn't affordable. When new, it cost around $13,500. In the early 1960s, that was Rolls-Royce money. Only 26 units were ever built. 26. The body was handcrafted in Italy by Carrozzeria Ghia, the same design house responsible for shaping some of Europe's most beautiful cars. Once finished, the bodies were shipped to the United States, where they were fitted with a Chrysler-sourced 383 cubic inch V8, producing about 335 horsepower. Italian design, American muscle, Hollywood attitude. Frank Sinatra owned one, so did members of the Rat Pack. This wasn't coincidence. The Dual Ghia wasn't flashy in the traditional American sense. It was sleek, refined, understated, but expensive looking in a way that only handcrafted cars can be. Inside, the cabin felt exclusive. Thick leather, fine wood trim, elegant instrumentation. It didn't shout, it smirked. But here's what makes the L6.4 fascinating. The company reportedly lost money on nearly every car. It wasn't about profit, it was about prestige. Owning one meant you were part of a very small circle. And then we arrive at a machine that blurred the line between race car and road car in a way that still feels unreal. Car number 7, Ford GT40 Mark III, 1967. The story of the GT40 begins on a racetrack, specifically Le Mans. Ford built the GT40 to defeat Ferrari in endurance racing, and they succeeded spectacularly. But the GT40 Mark III was something different. It was the street-legal version of that race-bred monster. Only 7 Mark III units were ever produced. 7. That's not limited production. That's near mythical. Under the rear deck sat a 407-liter V8, tuned to produce about 306 horsepower. Less aggressive than the pure race cars, but still brutally fast for a road car in 1967. Unlike its racing siblings, the Mark III had real doors with roll-up windows, a quieter exhaust system, softer suspension, a proper dashboard with more refined gauges. But don't be fooled, this was still a mid-engine machine with racing DNA. When new, it cost around $18,500 in 1967. To put that into perspective, that was enough money to buy multiple muscle cars or even a modest suburban home. The rear section was elongated slightly to allow for minimal luggage space, giving it a unique silhouette compared to the racing Mark I and Mark II versions. Driving it wasn't casual. You sat low, visibility was limited, the cabin was tight, but every moment felt special. Because you weren't just driving a car, you were driving a victory. The GT40 Mark III represents something rare in automotive history, a genuine race car adapted to the street, built in numbers so small that seeing one today feels like spotting a moving museum piece. And that's the magic of the 1960s. On one side, towering luxury convertibles with leather and chrome. On the other, lightweight monsters built to dominate racetracks. 7 cars, 7 philosophies. Luxury, theater, power, excess, rebellion, exclusivity, racing heritage. They weren't designed to save fuel, they were designed to make statements. And decades later, they still do.